Hey everybody, it's JB. Welcome back to the channel and a thing I call Tones from the Boogie Barn, in which we explore the sounds behind the music we so fiercely adore. And today we are talking about vintage overdrive sounds, courtesy of a circuit that's been around since before I ever started playing guitar. It's a famous pedal, it's green, it has a ton of mid-range, and somehow it has stood the test of time and still shows up on pedal boards of everybody from the rich and famous to the poor and amateur and everybody in between. Tube screamers came out in the late 70s. They were addressing a number of needs, I think, that guitar players had. And I want to talk about the things that they do and the ways to use them. But I personally have not used a screamer style circuit for decades, probably 30 years. And I think the reason is because I play a lot of mid-rangey guitars and amps. I use a lot of Gibson ES335 and Les Paul humbucker tones going into Mesa Boogie amps, which are famous for having a lot of mid-range. And the screamer circuit has even more mid-range. So I just figured maybe I'm not a screamer circuit guy, but a lot of my favorite players have used them, and I myself loved it back when I used it in my first band. And that's probably because I was using a Strat in that band a lot. And the problem that this pedal solves is very connected to Fender and Fender style guitars. So what I decided to do is revisit it with a different type of setup than what I normally would use, and then just kind of remember what it was that appealed to me about that sound. Now, BBE has sent me this wonderful version of the TS style circuit. It's called the Green Screamer. They've had several iterations of this pedal. You may have seen them around, but this is the brand new one. It's like a very high-end screamer circuit. You probably know that BBE is also the parent company of G&L, and I am an avowed evangelist of G&L, and I have a lot of BBE pedals. I love them. And this one's real interesting to me because I don't actually have anything else like it. So I'm going to play this G&L Legacy into one of my boogies, but this is going to be a Fender black panel style setup. So I'm running the amp a lot cleaner than I normally ever would, with a lot of mid-range taken out, just really going for that 60s black panel Fender sound, which brings me to what I think is the raison d'être of the Tube Screamer circuit. If you are playing a clean Fender style guitar into a clean Fender style amp, you're going to get a tone like this. Glassy, pretty, articulate, detailed, all those words we like to use about that tone. And you can even go further with these in between pickup settings. That's the tone. Now, it's great if you're playing rhythm. You're playing chords with that, and it's just like, you know, this glorious, expansive kind of tone. But if you start playing single notes with that sound, and you're in a loud band where the drummer's hitting a lot of cymbals, and maybe you even have a rhythm guitar player or a keyboardist, your single notes are going to disappear. They sound great by themselves. It's a cool sound, but it's going to vanish in the context of a band. And I really think that putting on a TS style circuit is going to bring your guitar back into the front of the mix. It's going to make the audience hear what you're playing. And in addition to a little bit of overdrive, it's that change of profile that makes it useful. Again, this is not a transparent overdrive. This is an overdrive that has a strong personality. So let's talk about the BBE. This particular pedal, like I said, it's gone through a few versions already. This is probably the third or fourth variation on this theme that they've done. But as you can see here, you've got, well, there's a few things. There's a green light. Obviously, that was a good call. Good job, guys. Green light. There's a jet fighter. Not sure why. Maybe because it screams. And then you got your tone control, your output, your gain, the usual suspects. Here's where it's different. There's a deep switch. And the deep switch is neutral at its middle setting or 0 setting, which means that you're going to get the classic profile, this sort of 720, 740 hertz mid-range bump with that attenuation in the bass. All right. But in the first position, it changes and it opens it up to about 616 hertz, which is a lot more low end. And in the second position, it goes down even further. I want to say in the 400s. So I'm just going to show you that deep switch really quickly. We won't have a lot of overdrive. You may have noticed that I had it in position 2 for the intro. And that's because when you go from your clean tone, here, on the neck pickup, say, and you engage it in the classic position, you'll notice it gives the impression of not being as beefy in the low end. And this can be really appealing if you're using a tube screamer to tighten up a high gain amplifier like a Mesa rectifier. A lot of guys use it that way. They'll put it in front of a really high gain amp and they'll do their chugging and it'll tighten it right up in just the right way that makes the amp happy and makes the crowds go wild. So that's cool. But if you're more on the bluesier, more organic end of the tone spectrum, you're probably going to want to open this up to at least the first position. It's a little more low end, and then the second position. It may be subtle, but it sure feels different when you're playing. And you may need to tailor it to which guitar you're playing. If you're plugging in a humbucker guitar, you might go back to the 0 position because you've got tons of low end coming out of your guitar. But going to single coils, it just feels really great to open it up. So, tone-wise, I had it cranked pretty high in the intro. Let's just go through the sweep really fast. Here's all the way off, which you're never going to use it like this. I mean, it doesn't sound bad. Halfway. And then almost cranked, not really, but just getting up there. You notice that this is not a super bright circuit. It has a warmth that's inherent to its character. It's got, even if you crank the tone control up, it doesn't get strident. Now, if we go past here, we're going to find one of the secret tones of this thing, which is a very bright, I'm going to back the overdrive off even more. Still usable, even though it's really bright. Personally, I find the sweet spot on this tone control with single coils to be somewhere in the 2/3, 2 o'clock kind of range. So we'll just leave it there for now. Gain-wise, let's see how much range there is. Here's all the way off. Almost clean. And in this case, you would crank the tone almost all the way up. Pretty clean. Tone control cranked, bass circuit wide open. That's as close as you're going to get to your guitar's natural tone, let's say. One way that I could see this pedal coming in real handy is doing melodic single note parts. So let's say you've got a lush arrangement that's full of big chords. Let's just say. And you want to play a melodic high part. Something like that. It's going to take up a nice spot in the mix, and it's going to sing. And it's not going to disappear and get, splinky and trebly and just sort of like vanish into the haze. On the bridge pickup, let's really gain it up and bring the tone down and see how that low end sounds. Great rock tone. And I have my treble wide open on the guitar. If I back it off a little. That's the sound of this thing with some, with a fair amount of gain. It's got a wide range of gain. And I actually really like that because you can get some real dirty amp kind of things going on with this. Couple things I want to mention about screamer circuits that are kind of important if you really want to have perspective on why this exists. And this has to do with volume. Those of you who've played through cranked up amplifiers, you know that the dynamics and the treble frequencies can feel a little spiky and jumpy and out of control. One of the uses of the screamer style circuit is it compresses, it tightens up frequencies, and it makes things feel a little more finished, a little more produced, a little more easy to take when playing at a high volume. So with the drummer cooking, you turn up your guitar really loud, and it has a tendency to be pretty forgiving with a screamer on. Whereas without it, you would start to notice all the little loose ends of your tone that stick out, particularly in the upper frequencies. So let's pretend that we're cranked up insanely loud, which we're not, but because I am at home. But let's say we're just punching the front of the amp without a lot of gain. And we've got the bass semi-wide open here. And we just want to break up the amp a little bit and also get some drive from the pedal. Another thing I was thinking about, I'm not a circuit guy. I don't know what goes on inside these boxes. I'm not actually aware of how much of a clean bleed there is going through a TS style circuit. But my feeling is that there's quite a bit. Let's get a lead tone. Let's really crank up the gain. Well, that about wraps it up for my thoughts about Screamer circuits in general and the BBE Green Screamer in particular. Thanks to my good buddies at BBE and G&L. And I hope you guys found it interesting and informative in some kind of way. And don't forget to comment below and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Onwards.